There are moments in your life where it feels like you're trapped in a loop. You wake up in the morning already defeated. Before your feet even hit the floor, a voice whispers, "You're not good enough. You're not going to make it. Nothing will ever change." And the dangerous thing about that voice is not just that you hear it, it's that you start to believe it. You start to let it set the tone for your day, and before long, one day of negative thinking turns into a week, then a month, then a cycle that feels impossible to escape. But here's what I came to tell you today. You do not have to live trapped in that cycle. You can break it, you can interrupt it, you can step out of it and into the freedom that God designed for you. And if you give me the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how. Because your mind is either going to be the battlefield where you lose, or the training ground where you win, and the choice is yours. See, negative thinking is not just an inconvenience, it's not just a bad mood, it's not just a gloomy outlook. Negative thinking is a pattern. It's like a groove in your brain that, if you keep running over it, gets deeper and deeper until it's almost impossible to drive out of it. That's why you keep coming back to the same self-doubts. That's why you keep finding yourself in the same fear, the same shame, the same insecurity. Not because you're weak, not because you're broken beyond repair, but because you've been running the same mental loop for so long that it feels normal. But normal doesn't mean necessary. Just because it has been doesn't mean it always has to be. A cycle can be broken, and that's the good news for you today. Here's what you need to understand. The enemy of your soul loves cycles, because if he can get you stuck in your mind, he doesn't even need to touch your circumstances. If he can trap you in negative thinking, he can keep you from moving forward, even while your life on the outside looks fine. You'll show up to work, you'll smile at people, you'll post the right pictures, but on the inside you're playing that same broken record. I'm not enough, I'll never be free, I'll never be happy. And this is why you've got to interrupt the cycle. You don't break a cycle by hoping it will go away. You don't break a cycle by waiting for the perfect moment. You break a cycle by introducing a new pattern into the loop. When that negative thought comes, you replace it with truth. When that lie shows up, you confront it with a declaration. When fear rises, you choose faith instead. Let me make it practical. Some of you wake up, and the first thought you hear is, "I can't handle this day." That's your loop. That's the cycle. What if instead you interrupted it with, "If God is for me, who can be against me?" Or when your mind says, "I've failed too many times to ever get it right," you replace it with, "Though a righteous man falls 7 times, he rises again." That's not wishful thinking, that's cycle. Breaking truth, because here's what's really happening. Negative thinking is almost always rooted in a lie. The lie that you are your past, the lie that you are your failure, the lie that you are your weakness. But truth exposes the lie, and once you know the truth, you're no longer a slave to the cycle. But you've got to fight for it. Don't think breaking the cycle will happen automatically. The default mode of your brain is negativity. That's why you've got to be intentional. That's why you've got to start speaking differently. Start surrounding yourself with people who push you toward life, not pull you back into the loop. Some of you need to change the soundtrack in your life, because as long as you're listening to voices of defeat, you'll stay in cycles of defeat. But imagine what would happen if today you made a decision. A decision that says, "I'm done repeating this pattern. I'm done letting the same thought steal my joy. I'm done letting this cycle run my life." Because once you decide to break it, heaven backs you up. God's Spirit inside of you gives you the power to do what you thought you couldn't do. And this isn't just about thinking positive thoughts. This is about rewiring your future. This is about breaking generational cycles that your family handed you. Cycles of fear, cycles of doubt, cycles of depression. This is about you saying, "It stops with me. My children will not inherit this cycle. My future will not be built on this cycle. My destiny will not be defined by this cycle." You can't always choose the thoughts that come into your mind, but you can choose the ones you dwell on. And when you make the choice to dwell on truth, to meditate on what is good, to fix your mind on what is hopeful. You don't just break a cycle, you build a new one. A cycle of confidence, a cycle of peace, a cycle of faith. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Are you willing to fight for your freedom? Because freedom from negative thinking doesn't come to the passive. It comes to the persistent, and if you'll keep showing up, keep speaking truth, keep interrupting the lies, you will break the cycle, not tomorrow, not someday, today. Negative thinking is one of the most dangerous traps you can fall into because it doesn't just touch your mind, it shapes your life. Thoughts are not random visitors, they are architects. Every time you dwell on the same destructive idea, you are laying down bricks in a house you will eventually live in. That's why you keep finding yourself in the same place emotionally, spiritually, even relationally. It's not because nothing around you is changing, it's because nothing within you is changing. Negative thinking has built a cycle, and that cycle has built a prison. The hardest part about this trap is that it feels so natural. It feels like your thoughts are simply reporting reality. You tell yourself, I'm just being honest. I'm just seeing things the way they are. But the truth is, you're not seeing things the way they are. You're seeing things the way your mind has been trained to see them. And if your mind has been conditioned by fear, if your mind has been conditioned by rejection, if your mind has been conditioned by years of comparison or criticism, then it will automatically reach for negativity, just like a compass needle automatically points north. That's why some of you can be surrounded by blessings yet still feel cursed. You can have opportunities in front of you and still feel stuck, because the cycle of negative thinking doesn't allow you to enjoy what you already have. It only allows you to focus on what's missing, what's broken, what's not enough. And the more you focus on those things, the more you reinforce the cycle until it feels less like a passing thought and more like your permanent reality. But here's the truth you need to hear today. That cycle can be broken. Just because your mind has been trained one way doesn't mean it cannot be retrained. Just because you've spent years in that groove doesn't mean you have to keep running over it. Your brain is elastic. It can be renewed, reshaped, and rewired. And the very moment you decide to confront those thoughts instead of simply entertaining them, that's the moment the cycle begins to lose its grip. Think about it like this. When you hear a song you don't like on the radio, you don't sit there and let it play on repeat. You change the station, but for some reason, when it comes to the negative thoughts in our minds, we let them play for hours, for days, for months, sometimes for years. What would happen if you learned how to change the station in your mind? What if instead of letting negativity dominate the playlist of your life, you introduced a new song, a new sound, a new declaration that shifts the atmosphere inside of you? That's the power of breaking the cycle. You can't stop the thoughts from coming, but you can stop them from controlling you. You can't stop the whispers from showing up, but you can choose which ones get to stay. And once you make that choice consistently, over time the trap that once held you becomes the testimony that frees you. Perspective is the lens that determines everything you see. Two people can stand in the same place, go through the same situation, face the same challenges, and yet one walks away defeated while the other walks away determined. The difference isn't the problem, the difference is perspective. Negative thinking thrives because it distorts your perspective. It magnifies what is wrong and minimizes what is right. It convinces you that the setback you're facing is permanent, when in reality it might just be a stepping stone. And once your perspective is poisoned, your decisions, your actions, and your emotions follow. That's why some people can look back at their past and only see failure, while others look at the same past and see growth. The same pain that made one person bitter is the same pain that made another person stronger. It all comes down to perspective, and here's the catch. Negative thinking doesn't just distort how you see your past, it distorts how you see your present and your future. You start interpreting every opportunity as too risky, every challenge as too overwhelming, every dream as too impossible. You don't even attempt because your perspective already told you the outcome is failure. But what if the thing holding you back isn't the weight of your struggle, but the way you're seeing it? What if the barrier isn't the situation itself, but the perspective you've allowed to frame it? You see, perspective can turn a problem into an opportunity, or it can turn an opportunity into a problem. That's why breaking the cycle of negative thinking requires a shift in how you see things. Imagine for a moment you're holding a magnifying glass. Whatever you focus on through that glass appears bigger. That's exactly how perspective works. Negative thinking is like holding the magnifying glass over your fears, over your flaws, over your failures. They appear larger than life. But when you make the decision to shift perspective, when you choose to hold the glass over your strengths, over your blessings, over the possibilities in front of you, suddenly what once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What once looked impossible now feels within reach. The truth is, you don't get to choose every situation you walk through, but you do get to choose the perspective you walk through it with. That's why some of you need to stop saying, "Why me?" and start saying, "What now?" Because why me keeps you stuck in self-pity, but what now positions you for growth. Why me keeps your perspective locked in victimhood, but what now shifts your perspective toward victory. Changing perspective doesn't mean denying reality. It doesn't mean pretending the pain doesn't hurt or the problem doesn't exist. It means refusing to let negativity define the entire picture. It means widening your lens to see that even in the middle of the struggle, there is still a way forward, there is still purpose, there is still hope. And when you make that shift, negative thinking begins to lose its power because it can no longer control the narrative of your life. So here's the challenge. What lens are you looking through? Because if you can change your perspective, you can change your life. Cycles don't break themselves. Left alone, they repeat. They replay the same story until you no longer notice it's happening. That's the power of a mental loop. It becomes so familiar that you begin to confuse it with your identity. You start saying things like, "That's just how I am. I've always been anxious. I've always been insecure. I've always been negative." But that's not who you are. That's the cycle talking. And the moment you accept the cycle as your identity, you give it permission to keep running your life. If you want to break the cycle, you have to interrupt it. Every cycle has a rhythm, a flow, a pattern, and the only way to stop it is to introduce something new into it. That's why one new thought, one new action, one new word has the power to disrupt years of negativity. You don't need a massive breakthrough to start, you just need an interruption. The same way a spinning wheel stops when something wedges itself in its path, the cycle of negative thinking stops when you insert a new pattern. Think about it. Every time that old voice shows up, "You're not enough, you'll never change, nothing will work out for you," you have two options. You can nod your head, agree, and let the cycle keep spinning, or you can interrupt it with a different response. Maybe you declare, "I am stronger than I feel." Maybe you take one small step of faith that contradicts the lie. Maybe you simply decide, "I will not let this thought be the loudest voice in my head today." That one decision is the interruption the cycle doesn't know how to handle. The cycle of negative thinking is fueled by repetition. Every time you let the same thought pass unchallenged, it grows stronger. But the moment you resist it, you weaken it. That's why it matters so much to be intentional. Left unchecked, your thoughts will always take the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is almost always negative. That's why you can't be passive. You can't just hope the cycle goes away. Hope doesn't break cycles. Habits do. A new habit of speaking truth. A new habit of taking action when fear tells you to stay still. A new habit of surrounding yourself with voices that call you higher instead of dragging you lower. And here's what you need to know. Interruptions don't always feel powerful in the moment. Sometimes they feel small, almost insignificant. But consistency is what transforms interruption into transformation. You don't break a cycle once. You break it every time the old pattern tries to reappear. Every day you choose to interrupt negativity with truth. You are carving a new path in your mind, until eventually, the old cycle doesn't even feel natural anymore. It's not about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about making a decision today to stop letting the cycle of negative thinking spin without resistance, because the cycle only has as much power as you allow it to have. And the moment you choose to interrupt it, the moment you insert truth into the loop, the cycle begins to lose its strength. Negative thinking survives on lies. It feeds on them, multiplies through them, and disguises itself so well that you don't even realize you're building your life on something that isn't true. Every cycle of defeat in your mind has a root, and almost always that root is a lie you started believing somewhere along the way. Maybe it was spoken over you when you were a child, you'll never amount to anything. Maybe it was the result of failure, I'll always mess things up. Maybe it was a voice inside you that said, I'm unworthy of love, I'm not smart enough, I'm not strong enough. Those lies, once planted, grow roots deep into your identity, and before long you stop questioning them. You start to live as if they're facts. The problem is, lies left unchallenged eventually feel like truth. And once you accept them as truth, you stop resisting. That's why negative thinking has such a grip on so many people, not because they're weak, but because they don't even recognize they're fighting lies. They think they're fighting reality. They think I'm just telling it like it is, when in fact they're repeating a distorted version of reality that's been playing in their head for years. But here's the breakthrough. The only power a lie has is the power you give it. The moment you expose it, the moment you call it what it is, it loses its grip. That's why truth is your greatest weapon. Truth doesn't just comfort you. It confronts the lie head on. It says, no, I am not my past. No, I am not my failure. No, I am not what others said about me. I am who God says I am. I am loved. I am chosen. I am capable. I am free. When you start replacing lies with truth, the cycle begins to collapse. It's like pulling bricks out of a wall of. Eventually, the whole structure comes crashing down, but it doesn't happen passively. You can't just hope the truth will drown out the lie. You have to speak it. You have to declare it. You have to rehearse it until it becomes louder than the voice of negativity in your head. The challenge is that lies often feel easier to believe than truth, because lies agree with your weakness while truth calls you into strength. Lies tell you what you can't do while truth dares you to rise into what you can. That's why so many people stay stuck. The lie feels more familiar than the truth, but familiar doesn't mean real. Comfortable doesn't mean correct. And if you keep clinging to the lie just because it feels familiar, you'll never walk into the freedom the truth offers. So what do? You confront it daily. Every time a lie rises, you counter it with truth. Every time the thought comes, I can't handle this, you respond, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Every time the voice says, I'm not worthy of love, you declare, nothing can separate me from the love of God. That's not blind positivity. That's spiritual warfare. That's how you tear down lies and build a life rooted in truth. Because in the end, the only thing strong enough to break the cycle of negative thinking is the truth. And the moment you anchor yourself in it, the lies that once chained you lose their power to hold you any longer. Breaking the cycle of negative thinking isn't just about survival. It's about stepping into a life where you can actually thrive. Too many people settle for simply existing, waking up, getting through the day, going to bed, and repeating the same loop. That's survival, and survival may keep you breathing, but it will never let you fully live. Negative thinking traps you in survival mode because it convinces you that you're only capable of making it through, never rising above. It whispers, just hold on, just endure, just scrape by. But life was never meant to be reduced to damage control. You were designed for more than coping. You were designed for conquering. Once the cycle is broken, something shifts inside of you. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. Instead of rehearsing every reason why things won't work out, you begin looking for ways they can. Instead of dwelling on your limitations, you start leveraging your strengths. Your mind begins to build new patterns, patterns of hope, of confidence, of possibility. And here's the incredible part. Those new patterns don't just change how you feel, they change how you live. They affect the opportunities you see, the risks you're willing to take, the relationships you're willing to invest in. A renewed mind creates a renewed life. That's why the fight to break the cycle is so critical. It's not just about silencing the noise in your head. It's about unlocking the future you haven't even dreamed of yet. Because negative thinking doesn't just hold you back emotionally, it holds you back spiritually, financially, relationally, creatively. It convinces you to play small when you were called to live big. It convinces you to stay quiet when you were created to speak with authority. It convinces you to give up when breakthrough might be one decision away. Thriving is what happens when you refuse to let negativity be your default setting anymore. It's what happens when you start choosing peace over panic, gratitude over grumbling, faith over fear. And thriving doesn't mean you'll never face challenges. It means you'll face them differently. Where before a setback would throw you into weeks of spiraling thoughts, now it becomes a setup for growth. Where before one rejection convinced you to quit, now it fuels your determination to try again. Thriving means you don't just bounce back, you bounce forward. And the beauty is this: when you thrive, the people around you are lifted too. Cycles don't only run in individuals, they run in families, in communities, in generations. When you break the cycle of negative thinking in your own life, you model a new way of living for others. You show your children, your friends, your coworkers that it is possible to live free from the constant weight of fear and doubt. Your thriving becomes contagious, and the cycle of negativity is replaced by a cycle of hope. So this isn't just about you. It's about the legacy you're building. The decision you make today to stop living trapped in negativity doesn't just affect your present. It shapes your future. It shifts your story from merely surviving to fully thriving, from barely getting by to boldly stepping into everything you were created to be. The truth is, the battle for your life has always been fought in your mind. If the enemy can trap your thoughts, he can trap your future. But if you make the decision today to interrupt the cycle, shift your perspective, confront the lies, and anchor yourself in truth, there is no chain of negativity that can hold you any longer. You don't have to live stuck in the same loops of fear, shame, doubt, or defeat. The cycle may have started with you, but it does not have to end with you. You are not powerless. You are equipped. You are not broken beyond repair. You are being renewed. And you are not here just to survive. You are here to thrive. The negative thoughts that once told you you'll never change will soon become the evidence that you already did. The patterns that once stole your joy will become the proof that joy can be restored. The cycle that once defined your life will become the testimony that inspires someone else to break free from theirs. So let this be the moment you draw the line. Let this be the day you say, the cycle ends here. The lies end here. The negative thinking ends here. Because once you choose to break the cycle, you don't just change your thoughts. You change your life, your future, and your legacy. And nothing is more powerful than a mind made new.